Let's do one more, Matt.
Let's do one more, John. All right, so this is Godspeed You, Black Emperor. And in the opening montage, boy, this was an interesting one to do. You heard a clip from A Nervous, Sad, Poor, and now you're going to hear a clip from Black, Uncertain, Beautiful. Okay, so this is
That's
Godspeed.
really funny, Matt, because I picked the other track for the Spotify playlist. So,
well, yeah, we'll get to that because this is an interesting record for a variety of reasons. But this is Godspeed You, Black Emperor's F sharp, A sharp, Infinity. Comes in at number 59 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 8 in 1997, number 312 of all time. It is Godspeed You, Black Emperor's second highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 2000's Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven.
Now, Matt,
titles.
Is it as you pronounced it, or is it Godspeed You, Black Emperor?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if you.
I think you could pronounce it like that, or you could do what the fans do, which is just write GY exclamation mark Black or BE, or just Godspeed. Right? There's a variety of different ways to do this. So, so
then
this
you
album,
might end up at a Godsmack concert, and you'd be really disappointed.
That would be very different. Yes, very different experience. It did not make Rolling Stone's list. None of the albums that we've covered tonight made Rolling Stone's list. But Godspeed You, Black Emperor, is ranked number 73 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums, so they are quite popular there. All right, so this is their debut album that was released on August. Okay, so a couple things. I think the main thing is there's two versions of this record. The first version was released on LP only, so only on vinyl. That was released on August 14th, 1997. But then there was a CD release on June 8th, 1998. That is about twice the length of the original album. Just for clarification, on the version that we were supposed to cover, but they certainly blend together. But the LP version, the shorter version, is the one that's ranked higher on Best Ever Albums. Because the other one's ranked much lower. It's their sixth highest rated album, rated 282 in the 1990s. But there's a lot of similarities, and we'll get to that. But genres include post rock and drone. Highest charting album was 2012's Alleluia, Don't Bend, Ascend. So if I'm doing the exclamation marks, that's probably how you should read it. That album reached number 45 in the U.S. Artists that they didn't have any singles chart. They influenced by several artists, including Slint, Sonic Youth, Talk, Jesus and Mary Chain, Swans, King Crimson, The Velvet Underground, The Cure, and Tortoise. And so history on the band. They were formed in 1994 in Montreal, so we've got some Canadians coming here. There's a bunch of members of this band. I'll get to that in a second, but the band was mainly formed by three guys: Efren Menuk on guitar, Mike Moya on guitar, and Mauro Pizzente on bass. They took its name from a 1976 Japanese black and white documentary called Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Josh, have you seen that movie?
No, definitely not.
Okay. No. Well, you can check it out if you want, I guess. But it follows the exploits of a Japanese biker gang called the Black Emperors.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So the name was also used on a limited release cassette before the band was technically formed. Efren Menuk released kind of this album called All Lights Fucked on the Hairy Amp Drooling by Godspeed You, Black Emperor. And they just later on decided to make that the name of the band. But Menuk later said that really shouldn't be considered a Godspeed You, Black Emperor album because it's very different than what the band would become. Actually, interestingly enough, the copies of those tapes were basically lost. And so for many, many years, people couldn't hear that record. But it resurfaced just a couple years ago in 2022. It's been released by the band since then online. But as I said, they're not really viewing it as a true Godspeed You, Black Emperor record. So the band plays some live shows, and they're growing in the number. And according to Menuk, that joining the band was a very simple process. He says, quote, "If it was like if anyone knew anybody who played an instrument and seemed like an okay person, they would sort of join up." So they just had a revolving door of people coming in, to rehearse and play with them, come to shows. So for a number of years, it was just a revolving door of musicians that they had. And by the time that they went into the studio to record this record, the band was 10 strong. So lots of different people playing here. So this album, as you guys I'm sure noticed, it's not really having any lyrics. There's not traditional lyrics or singing. This is mostly an instrumental album. That is kind of a hallmark of their sound. It's the songs are fairly lengthy. They're segmented into movements. And this album was initially, released in limited quantities. They had very elaborate packaging that they would have, like a variety of different items and things like that. And I believe the first 500 records were just it was all hand packaged. The first 500 that they pressed. So the original vinyl edition included just 2 songs. And each song had several movements. The first song is 20 minutes and 43 seconds. The second one, 17 minutes and 36 seconds. And the title of the album refers to the tuning of the guitars and the loop at the end of the record. So the opening note of the track on side A is an F sharp. The opening note on the track of the opening track of side B is an A sharp, and then the record they finagled the record that at the end, I guess in a certain way, because normally the needle on the record player moves towards the center of the record as it plays. Well, they kind of jimmied it so it basically just revolved and kept playing the same part over and over again, that it would not move the needle to the end and stop the record. So essentially, it would force somebody to have to get up and turn the record player off, because it would just play on an infinite loop. So that's the significance of the title of the record. So after they released the record, they went on tour in the U.S. and they sent the record to a number of different kind of promoters and labels. There was a Chicago-based record label called Cranky, and they liked it so much that they offered to release it on CD. And the band decided that they would rework the album, keeping in some parts, changing arrangements around, adding a whole new track onto it, and basically doubling the runtime of the LP version. And so that's why I asked you guys. It's if you kind of like the first one, listen to the other one, because I've read online, some people feel the original one's better, some people feel the second one's better. So, but I would say it's also the tone is very similar. Josh, Danny Boyle, is that a name familiar to you?
Of course,
English
I've
director?
seen all of his movies. Yes.
Okay, so you've seen the movie 28 Days Later.
Of course.
Yes. There you go. So he said in an interview with the Guardian about that film, he said, quote, "I always try to have a soundtrack in my mind when creating a film. Like when we did Trainspotting, it was Underworld. For me, the soundtrack to 28 Days Later was Godspeed. The whole film was cut to Godspeed in my head," which is kind of I never saw 28 Days Later, but it's kind of a dystopian
zombie movie. Yeah.
Zombie movie. And after listening to this record, it's that would make sense. So
yeah, that fits. Yeah.
Yep. So they get a little bit more attention. They're touring more extensively. They earned a reputation for their live performances. They often performed in near darkness with films being projected on the background. So adding to the surrealism, that became kind of the trademark vibe that they had. They're a taper-friendly band. Have you guys ever heard of that? Taper-friendly? You know what that means?
No.
You could tape their concerts and trade them amongst each other.
Yeah, they're fine with you recording, and some with the performances, and actually in some cases, if they're playing a song that's never been released, it'll be released by someone in the crowd before it's released.
Aren't they anarchists? That's one of the few things I knew about this band ahead of time.
Well, John, it's funny you say that. So the Guardian also wrote that Godspeed You, Black Emperor, quote, "Don't simply espouse anti-capitalism, but embody it, rejecting the selfish individualism at its core." And yes, Ephraim Minook is a self-proclaimed anarchist. There's a funny story. They were actually on tour. They were in Oklahoma or something, and they got detained because they were suspected terrorists. I didn't really read a whole lot of the specific reasons why, if it was just their dress or something, that the way that they were acting. But yeah, people were kind
yesterday or
No, that's a good question, Josh. No, this is many years ago. But
okay.
And then one final thing, we're going to cover them again, but I found this to be funny. It's very kind of indicative of their kind of overall ethos. But so I guess in 2013 they won the Polaris Music Prize. And so in response to winning this award, they released a statement saying, quote, 3 quick bullet points that almost everyone can agree on, maybe. Number 1, holding a gala during a time of austerity and normalized decline is a weird thing to do. Number 2, organizing a gala just so musicians can compete against each other for a novelty-sized check doesn't serve the cause of righteous music at all. Number 3, asking the Toyota Motor Company to help cover the tab for that gala during a summer where the melting northern ice caps are live streaming on the internet is all caps fucking insane and comes across as tone deaf to the current horrifying malaise. So that's a little little insight into their whole aesthetic. So very interesting band. I am curious to hear some takes here. And Josh, we're going to start with you. What do you think?
I also thought it was very interesting. This is definitely an album you have to pay attention to. It is very esoteric. It's mostly instrumental. I mean, in fact, I think it's all instrumental. There's some singing, I guess. But
there's some
really
spoken word stuff.
Yeah,
It's like spoken words. Yeah.
And because there's only, I only listened to the LP. I didn't get time to listen to the CD release, so I don't can't speak to that. But there's multiple kind of sections or movements within the songs, within the 2 tracks. So, and it does change pretty distinctly from track or movement to movement. So there's a lot going on this album in a short amount of time for 38 minutes. It's a challenging album. This is not this is avant-garde. This is not like your straight ahead pop. This isn't even something like Fishman's, which we all love. That is more traditional music, albeit like 1 track or long or whatever it is. There is a lot of different instruments and kind of sounds and transitions going on this album. There's some slight, I don't know, like country music aspects to it. The spoken word, it's a real like, it's a real haunting, like eerie, weird album as well. The spoken word is unsettling. It did remind me a lot of like David Lynch, like Lost Highway or aspects of Twin Peaks at times too, with the spoken word stuff. This is definitely a night album. I listened to it both times at night. I think that was the perfect atmosphere. It's a hard album to pin down in terms of like what they're going for. I feel like they are very experimental, but it's still, I did find it like, it's still interesting to listen to, and I didn't find it so avant-garde that it was off-putting in the way that like some electronic music that we've listened to is, in terms of being like purposefully obtuse. I think there's still like a foundation of music to this sound, to this band, or to this album, that kept me listening. And so that being said, I wasn't like bowled over by this album. I don't think it could. I think the type of music is, for me, like I couldn't be bowled over anyway by this type of music. It is more of like a thinking person's album. I think it's as John says, it's like a headphones album for sure. This isn't something you're going to put on in the car. There's a certain time and place for it, and it's academic in that way, in some respects, or scientific maybe. It's definitely unlike, I mean, there's things that we have listened to there is a lineage of this type of music that we've listened to, certainly, but it certainly feels like music from like the Canadian like tundra or something. And I don't, it's a weird album to like say thumbs up or thumbs down to. Like I guess it's a thumbs up, but it's still an album that would for me require like more listening. But I can also see, like, to your point, like there would be like diehard fans of this band, and like they're so kind of weird and avant-garde that, and if they're playing different stuff like every concert or whatever, they could get that like devoted following of people interested in seeing what they come up with. They're kind of like orchestral or kind of organic in that aspect too, I imagine, based on this album. But yeah, this was an interesting one. But not sure that I would like, I'm like anxious to like hear the next album or feel the same way I do like about the old 97s albums or something like that. Like it's a grower, I guess, ultimately. So I don't know. What did you think, John?
I fucking love this album. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why the fuck have I not been on this band from the beginning? They play a venue near me called Union Transfer a couple times a year. And to give you an idea how much I like this album, I listened to this the first time and I stopped the album at the end of it and I logged on to the internet and I immediately bought tickets to the next time they come into the area. Like,
Okay.
unlike you, Josh, there's nothing academic about this at all for me. This emotionally resonates with me as an album. It's it's got lineage of ambient and spare music that we've covered before. It has elements of Matt mentioned Slint, and that came to mind immediately because there is elements of dream pop in this as well.
Yeah.
There's definitely like a Sonic Youth element to this, like especially like Evil sister type Sonic Youth era, maybe not with the distortion guitar, but like what they're going for, like playing with space and like the eeriness with it.
There's a space aspect.
Is all over it. It's a little bit in the same lane that something like Schizophrenia by Sonic Youth has, like earlier Sonic Youth. So and I think Matt mentioned that they were an influence too, and I absolutely can see that as well. But yeah, this was like yes, Josh, it is a headphones album for sure. It sounds great, but it also sounds great in a car, like when you're driving around. It's great, like driving in the dark or driving a long drive type music when you want to get into sort of a certain type of headspace. It's the type of album that makes me think existentially, which I love that type of album. I listened to this album in the pitch black with headphones on, and there's been a couple albums that have been that for me, where I'm like, oh, I have to listen to this in the type of setting where like I turn senses off and I just kind of see what this album does, right? And like in that format, because that's the thing where it like demands the most amount of me processing it with mind, body, and soul, right? Like that's my ultimate space, right? When I'm like laying on my back in a bed, like lights off, just by myself, like processing what the album is. And this album,
like sensory deprivation.
It's like
listening to music.
yes, because this album, like I have an emotional and a sensory reaction to this album. Throughout the entire album, I loved the pacing of the album, how it went to almost like dead silence at times, and the radio dispatches were sort of like that KLF album that I thought was a really cool album too, which we also talked about being an incredible driving album. But this was sort of a landscape. This album was a landscape that I injected myself into, but it's like a sonic landscape that was sort of otherworldly, would be the way I'd describe this. It's like when I listen to this type of music, it's a really appealing type of music for me, because it allows me to sort of like ascend out of my body in some ways and just listen to the sounds. And as an overthinker by personality, and as someone who has a hard time relaxing, right? When I get an album that allows me to like enter that space, it really, really resonates with me. And there's been a few. There was a Cocteau Twins album that was in that lane. There was that Galaxy 500 album that was able to do that. Slint came really close to it. There were a couple others. I'll come back to that. There was a little bit of Slow Dive right, that could put me in that headspace, but where I'm just sort of allowing the music to like wash over me and just be, right, like almost existentially, and that's what I got from this album. I know, Josh, you said it did not make you want to check out the rest of it. It had the polar opposite end of me. I'm like, I need to like check out all of this band stuff, because I just get the feeling that a lot of the stuff they're going to do is going to be interesting and a lane for me. I did not find this album to be like hard or challenging either, because this isn't like brain rock for me. This is like emotional / sensory music for me. And just the intricacies when you listen to it that come in, you can at first listen, it doesn't sound like it's got all the parts, and then the more you listen to it, the more you start to see all of the different people, and you're like, oh, this is like a collective of folks. This isn't like a 4-piece or just, you know, a couple different people. And I loved that each time I listened to it, I picked out different things that came along. So real high thumbs up for me. I really, really love this album.
Yeah, this is a band that I've heard of, like here and there. I've got some. I got a friend, a couple friends that have like, I've just heard them talking, not even directly to me, but I just knew that they were big fans. They're like, oh, Godspeed, they're so, you know. And I was just like, what? So that's why when it came time if I had to do double bios this week, I was like, well, let me learn about this, because I never really listened to them before, so I was definitely intrigued. And yeah, this is a different type of music, right? The KLF definitely came up for me. It was a very similar kind of, because that was another album it's non-traditional. There were several movements. It was kind of like, painting. It's almost like a landscape. It was very much like, theatrical, right? It's like a motion picture soundtrack, right? So like, it totally makes sense that the 28 Days Later guy was like, yeah, that was going on in my head when I was coming up with this film. So it is one of those things, like, you know, John, you've said this before, where, you know, you hear the beginnings of a record and you go, oh, okay, like this is not going to be, I'm not going to listen to this the way that I normally would, right? This is going to be a kind of a different, this is going to, command a different environment or, you know, mindset or whatever. So that's definitely true with this.
Do you stop at that point? Because there are some albums where I'm like, let me do a listen where I do it the traditional way. And then there's some it's like, no, it's never going to be able to listen to that way.
You know what? No, and I should. But like, it's more just like, because most of my listening is actually happening, you know, in when my attentive listening for these has been basically in the car on the way back to and from work is where I'm getting most of those listens in. I did listen to this with headphones, but I was not fully engaged just with that. There were some other things that I was doing. So just invariably, it's when I'm doing that, I'm not fully present with the music, right? And this, so yes, is that kind of a better environment to let me just focus 100% on this? Absolutely, right? And I would probably get more out of it there. But I would say that, like, it wasn't, I wasn't getting bored. I wasn't like, move on, come on, let's get to some, because there's parts of this that are more traditional, and that's what I kind of was going for, Josh, when I picked out the clips here. I was like, well, let me pick out some of the parts that are a little bit more traditional guitar parts, where there's parts in here where they might come out of nothing and just have this kind of droning guitar kind of playing very slowly, like a violin comes on, and then all of a sudden the drums come in and they kick it up a little bit, and there's this little movement that's happening, and you're like, okay, and now I'm bobbing my head to it. I'm like feeling it, it's there for a couple minutes, and then it goes back into the kind of the more droning, part of the music, or the less traditional music part. So I like that. It's kind of like the first listen, I was like, oh, like the first time that they did that, I'm like, when are they going to do it again? Like, it's going to happen again. What's it going to sound like? So there's some anticipation there that I thought was kind of cool. And now that I know the album a little bit better, it's kind of like, you know, like I know it's coming. So it's kind of like, you know, those are the parts that I probably like the most, but I also, it kind of goes by quickly, just like listening to like this very slowly paced, like soundscape, right? It's what it is. It's not traditional music, but there's something also very intriguing about it. There's something very inviting about it. There's something else. It is dystopian. That's the other thing too. It's like, yeah, this sounds like it's it sounds like you're kind of one of the last remaining people in this town or whatever. And it's just all this, like the ruins of the society that once was and whatnot. So it's a little kind of creepy in that regard, but it's still just a really cool place that it brings you to, and it's just very unique. So I found it interesting listening to both both versions. If you like the shorter one, you go into the longer one, you're going to get more of this, right? Some people are arguing that the LP version was more succinct. And they like the way that, I think, the way that it ends, specifically on that loop, and the way, like, that's something that really connected with a lot of people. Other people were saying that they thought that the CD version was better because it's just giving you more of what you like so much about the LP, right? And it's kind of bringing other parts into that as well, so giving you more of a listening experience. So I can't say that I liked one better than the other. I think that they're very similar. It's just, do you want to spend a little bit more time? Do you want to spend twice the amount of time with this, or do you want to spend like the shorter version? So really interesting. I'm intrigued to listen to them more. I know we're going to cover them at least one or two more times. That's funny, John, just getting tickets right away. Yeah, this would be a fun band to see live. I think that just for a unique experience, to get something different, because, for all the music that we've covered,
it's like, turn the lights off and give me a fucking seat, and I'm just here for it.
And just there
for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so much of the music that we've covered, it's like, oh, this is just building off of this genre. This is building off of what this artist did. This is kind of like the evolution of this particular, movement or whatever. And then every now and then we get something that's just so not traditional, so unique, and so like there's not many people doing this. There's not much, there's not many bands that are doing this, type of thing.
Yeah, there's classical music influences to this. Yeah. There's orchestral along with pop, rock and pop music. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so you're right, John. You're getting more into the classical sense and the movements, right? Because each one of these, even though the songs have, their titles, but there's specific movements of, like, the Dead Flag Blues, Slow Moving Trains, the Cowboy, Drugs in Tokyo. So there's all these different, movements that are put within it, but it all kind of just they piece it all together for one just sonic landscape. So yeah, very interesting. I liked it quite a bit. It's unlike the old 90s. It's not an album I can listen to at any point in time. It's something that, and I had it on the background at work. That was kind of an interesting listening experience, because it's probably better to do what John did, but you can also kind of have this in the background as kind of like, I don't know, like a white noise kind of a thing, because it can kind of be like that as well. But yeah, this is, I think, the best listening scenario is kind of doing what John's doing, where you're just giving your undivided attention and just letting it wash over you and letting it just be, because it's just so unique. So yeah, thumbs up, man. This is interesting stuff for sure.
I don't know of any other way that I can listen to this type of music, because it is not a. I really enjoy it, but I really enjoy it because of, like, what it is, and it's not something I would go to all the time. But it's. But that's not because I don't love it. It's because it requires that, and life doesn't give you the ability to, like, have that type of time. So
yeah.